Hello everyone and welcome back to Kayla's Kitchen. Today we are doing something a little bit different, as you might be able to tell, but today we are going to be making 3 different types of do-it-yourself holiday advent calendars. One thing that I've done for the past couple of years is make myself my own little tea advent calendar because I have enough tea to do that with, so why not just put it into a little advent calendar. So today I'm going to be going through and showing you 3 different ways that you can go about doing this. One of them is going to be like super easy and low maintenance. The next one will be a little bit more time consuming, and the last one will be like if you really want to get into it and make something really fun and exciting, that's the one you should do. So the first thing you need to do is of course decide what you want to put inside of your advent calendar. So I have out here in front of me an assortment of many kinds of tea, and I will put these little things, everything that I put into the calendar will go in a blog post so that you can see sort of what I did and use that for your own reference. But if you are going to be putting in sachets or loose leaf tea, whatever you're putting it in, you need to have a way for either yourself or whoever you're giving this to know what tea this is. So what I did is I printed off, I made these little grids, and I put on the grid the name of the tea and then how long to steep the tea for. A couple of other things that I have decided to put in the calendar is I have some little Christmas recipes, I have some little like idea prompts, as well as some little poems that I thought would be fun to go inside. So this is what my chart originally looked like, and then I cut it out so that on one side I have what the tea is and the steeping instructions on the back. So the first calendar that we're going to be doing is the most simple, and all you're really going to need is a little box or a tin or something like a little basket, something cute to put everything in, some paper, scissors, tape, ruler, whatever, and then all your little tea and labels and anything else that you want to put inside each package. So essentially all we are going to be doing is making little envelopes. So now we have a really cute little envelope. We will slide our tea packet in there. So I'm going to tape the tag actually onto the inside of the envelope, right up there. We're just gonna put a little piece of tape right there. So I have 2 of these Sharpie metallic permanent markers. I have a gold and a silver, and these are going to be perfect for writing like day 1 or just a number 1 or whatever you want to do on the back. I'm going to write day 1. And you could seal this off with a piece of tape. You could seal it off with a cute little Christmas sticker, or you could leave it. It actually does stay down really well, so you don't need to do any kind of sealing. And then you dump it in your box and you make 24 more. So we're on to the next one. This next advent calendar is going to be a little bit more high maintenance, but it's also going to be really fun. So what you need: a big box. You could use a shoe box. I have this nice square box and it's only like 3 inches thick, and so that's kind of nice because it will fit tins really perfectly. But we are going to make a punch-out advent calendar. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, here's what we got. So the first thing that we are going to need to do for this box is figure out how many circles we can get in here. Now, ideally, I think I can do 24. Depending on the size of your box, you might do like 2 of these and do like 12 and 12, or whatever. So you're going to need something round to trace out your circles and just put it on here. And I like to use a ruler so that I can make sure that they are evenly spaced and everything like that. So you're just gonna put it on there. Don't do it directly on the edge. Make sure you leave at least a 1/4 of an inch border around the entire thing. So now I have all of my circles drawn, and I'm going to be using an X-Acto knife to cut out each circle from the box. And as always, whenever you're using any kind of sharp object, be super, super careful with it. Make sure that if you're cutting, you're not holding the bottom of the box. Make sure you're just cutting straight through. You're not gonna cut yourself. Don't cut yourself. It's not good for you. Ta-da! So I cut out all 12 of the circles for my little advent calendar. So the next thing that we are going to do is I want something to cover the front of the box because I want something to make it look all nice and cute. So I'm going to be using some Christmas wrapping paper. I have just this really cute wrapping paper, and I'm just going to measure. I want this to be able to wrap the side, so I'm going to leave like maybe 1/4 inch, let it wrap the side, the front, and the other side flap. So I know like about right here is where I want it to stop. My wrapping paper wonderfully has grid lines on it, so I'm going to follow one of those grid lines and cut this piece off. Before I use my wrapping paper, I'm going to cut off the back of the box. Now this part gets a little bit tricky because we need to be making sure that we're keeping track of like how everything sort of fits together. So what we need is we need 2 of these strips that will be able to go all the way across the bottom so we can have these shelves. So we need 2 strips the same length as from here to here on your box. Now because my box is almost a square, it's slightly not a square, but I will be able to use any of these side flaps, they'll work. So what I want to do is make sure that whichever 2 side flaps I use, I will still have sides on the box. See how this doubles up on the end here and here and here and here? So I can take off 2 of them, but I can't take off this one and this one because then this side of the box wouldn't have a flap. So I need to make sure I take off 1 from each side. I'm going to choose to take off the 2 off of this back piece because I think that it will make it easier for actually putting the box back together in the end. So I have the back of my box, these are now 2 shelves, and I have the front of my box. I'm sorry if this is kind of complicated. You might be watching this and go, wow, this is really complicated. Just wait till you get to the next one. Now is a good time to wrap the whole box. As you can see, the sides, top, and front of the calendar are all covered in beautiful paper so that when we are doing our final assembly, everything that is visible will look all nice and pretty. But as you might have noticed, I covered up all those wonderful circles that we made. So we're gonna flip it around and cut out the holes. If you put your calendar flat on your surface, if you are working on a table that you do not want to get scratched up or anything, make sure you have another piece of cardboard underneath. This is an X-Acto knife, so of course it cuts through paper, and you just, you know, trace around the outside. Boom. Peel that out, easy peasy. Ta-da! Now we have our advent calendar with all of our holes cut out. The next thing that you are going to need is your tissue paper. I'm going to use 2 pieces of tissue paper, and I think I want, on my tissue paper, there's a glossier side and a matte side, and I want to put the glossy sides together. Then I'm going to, as carefully as I can, cut these out to the size of just this part with all the pieces folded in, the like final size that my box is going to be. Essentially, you just want to have 2 layers of tissue paper. Now we have our box. We're going to put this down here. We have our hot glue. We're going to do a layer all the way across the top. Now we're going to put on our second piece of tissue paper. Now you have your individual days. Before we get to the final piece of assembling this together, you'll want to write day 1 or just 1 or whatever on the outside of the tissue paper. I'm going to just be using a black Sharpie with this, I don't know. And be a little bit careful as you do this. You don't want to rip the tissue paper because if you do, you of course just have to do it again. So now we have our 12 days on here, and we can go ahead and do the final assembly. For this, we need our 2 little shelves. And this part is a little bit tricky, but I recommend sort of putting this like on the side so you can kind of see like where your shelf is hitting. And you want to put this just below each circle. So now what we're going to do is assemble this part of the box back together. And another thing that you can kind of do, take one of your circles that you cut out, cut that in half, and you can use this, prop it at an angle, but you can use it to make sure that your shelves are holding up. So here's a closer look at the outside of the box. So we have our numbering all nice and fun on the front, and then on the inside we have our shelves, which are glued in, and I just have these little supports from the circular cutouts to make sure that these are a little bit more stable. So I know that this box is not completely finished yet, but we are going to take a break from this one. We're going to finish up our last one, make the last one, and then come back so that we can finish filling up all 3 of the boxes together. Now this last box is going to be probably the most complicated, but I think it's going to be really fun. So how we are going to go about this is that what this box is going to be is a Christmas tree with little shelves on it. You could, of course, make another shape. That's what I'm going to be doing though, is the Christmas tree. So in order to make it, you are going to need some foam board. So I just have a white foam board here. So we're going to need some pencils, and we're going to start sketching out what this is going to look like. So I'm actually going to take a little piece of scrap paper and start sketching out the kind of design that I want. So since I know approximately what this is going to look like, I can now think about how many pieces do I want on each shelf here. So let's say I want 3 tins on the top, and maybe I want 2 tins on the bottom. And then, so now I'm at 5 tins. So I'm gonna keep track of how many tins I have in here. So these are gonna be, for me personally, my little gold David's tea tins. Now on the next shelf, I have 2 more shelves in here. So if I wanna do 25 days, that means that I have to fit 10 in here and 10 in here, which shouldn't be a problem because I think I'm going to do envelopes in here. So there will be 10 envelopes, I'm just gonna write 10 there, and 10 envelopes in there. So that's approximately what I want this to look like. So now what you're going to need is a ruler. And the reason we need this is because we need to figure out how thick we need our tree. And we need to figure out how tall it's gonna be. We need to figure out a lot of things. We don't know anything. So what you wanna do is utilize the straight edges on your piece of foam board as best as you can. So the longest pieces on my little tree here are going to be the bottom of this piece and this piece. So perhaps what I want to do is put this horizontally. So I made that envelope for earlier, so I have one of these, so I can kind of guess how thick each envelope will be. So with the tea in it, and this is probably the thickest that one will be because this is one of the heaviest teas that I have, this is about 1 inch thick. So that means that my bottom board needs to be at least 10 inches wide. So I'm gonna go 12 inches from bottom to bottom. And that should be able to fit 10 envelopes. Now we have to figure out how wide we want our box to be. So I'm thinking probably 3 inches wide. That was about the size of the other one. I think that 3 inches is going to be a good size. So we're going to measure up 3 inches. So we actually need to make this longer. So instead of 12 inches, we're going to go with 14. So we're going to add 2 inches onto here. Now the next one, we are going to make 12 inches. So we have a 14-inch bottom piece, a 12-inch bottom piece, and then we need to think about, and I'm just going to focus on these first 2 parts. So now these are going to be the same height. So again, looking at our envelope, these will all fit across, but they need to be at least, if we measure the height of our envelope, that's about 3.5 inches. So I want the height of the shelves to be 4 inches. So, but once again, because the shelves slant, just doing 4 inches of the actual piece that I'm cutting out, the height from the bottom shelf to the top shelf will be less than 4 because it's on a slant. So mathematically, I'm going to go with 5 inches because I'm guessing. So now we have our 4 5x3 rectangles, and that is all of the pieces that we need for these first 2 parts of the tree. So I have my 14x3 rectangle, I have my 12x3 rectangle, and then I have each of these 5x3 rectangles. So now for the top triangle. So what I need to do for this is take my little canisters that I'm going to be using. So for the top triangle, I need to take my little canisters that I'm going to be using. Once again, these are just little gold David's Tea tins. And I'm going to figure out how wide this, once again, we're keeping it 3 inches thick, but I need to figure out how long the shelf needs to be. And I think I'm gonna go with 9 inches. To make the top 2 pieces that come together, once again, those need to be the same size. I'm going to use this space that I have, which is 6.5 inches. It also happens to be by 3 inches. So now I have all of the pieces that I need to make the outline. So I'm going to use my X-Acto knife, again, being incredibly careful, and cut this out. Okay, so we have all of our pieces cut out now. And what we are going to do is start assembling them. So once your glue has dried, you have a little Christmas tree, but she's a little flimsy and a back would be nice. So all I really need to do is trace the entire outline. So now we have the back of our tree, and we have this, and we should be able to just line that up on one side, and we have a perfect backing. Here it is. Ta-da! Now, this is fine. I could definitely leave it like this. It's white, so it kind of looks like a winter wonderland kind of Christmas tree, but I think I want to add some pizzazz. I don't know about you, but I'm all for pizzazz. So one thing that I just happen to have laying around my house is these fun gold tassels. So I think I want to use them somehow. Ta-da! I don't know about you guys, but I think that that is pretty fun. Look at that. It's tasseled, all tasseled up. Okay, everyone, I have cleared off my table. I am probably going to take a break for a second, and then the next thing that you're going to see is a time lapse of me putting together all the different days, and hopefully I'll record like a voiceover to talk about what I'm doing, but we'll see if that happens. Alrighty everyone, so the first thing that I am doing is putting numbers on my tins, and now I am wrapping up my loose leaf tea in some tin foil to try and keep it as airtight as I can. So I'm just taking my little sachets and wrapping them a couple of times in some folded pieces of tin foil just to make sure that the tea doesn't get exposed to the air too much. I also decided to fill up my tins with my loose leaf tea, and of course I am using my labels all this time to make sure that I am keeping track of which tea is where. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is make my envelopes. So I have selected all of the colorful papers that I'm going to use, and the first thing that I needed to do was cut off the top of the paper, but then I just folded the 2 of the corners into each other and then folded the bottom up and the top down to make the envelope. Okay, so we have all of the pieces for our advent calendars ready. So I have my envelopes, I have my wrapped up either sachets or filled paper bags, and then I also have all of my tins. Now, to get the amount of days that I need, I actually ran out of paper filters. So I also have some bags of sachets or just little tea bags. You could do, and this would be a lot easier, your entire advent calendar with just your tea bags or sachets. I did that the first year that I made my own advent calendar. That's what I did. What I have here, and I'm kind of going to go through my process, and this is what I've decided to do. This is where this process is really customizable, because I have recipes, I have little activities, and I also have some little Christmas poems, as well as all of the tea. So what I chose to do is have every day have a tea in it, but also in my punch out box calendar, which is a 12-day calendar, every day is also going to have either a recipe, a poem, or an activity. So remember, we still have our backing and we have the main part, which is just empty right now. So what we are going to do is put each of our little things in here. So what I'm going to do for this one, because it is closed off and you can't see it, I'm actually not going to do any envelopes in this one, because one, they wouldn't fit through the holes, so that would be a little awkward, and two, because it's closed off, like you don't see it until you pull it out, so it doesn't need to look very cute, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to tape on the activity, and then to make sure that these don't slide around, I'm just going to make a little tape bubble, put that on the bottom, and put that under day one. So that way, even if I like hold this sideways, I can move it all around. It's not gonna move around and we don't have to have cross-sectional dividers. Okay, so in here I have all of my teas and all of my little activities or recipes or poems, and the next thing that we need to do is put the backboard back in here. So that is the completion of my 12 little day advent calendar with little teas and other little surprises inside. So because this is tissue paper, how I will open this is you just gotta like punch in each day and pull out the fun little surprise inside. Now onto the Christmas tree calendar. So this one is going to be all filled with my little tins and my envelopes. And referring back to the beginning, the first idea for an advent calendar was just doing all of these little envelopes and putting them in a little box or a tin. So I put some of the envelopes that are going to go in this tree in this little box so I can kind of show you what that would look like. It's super cute and it would be a really sweet gift for someone as well. I mean, all of these would be, but this one's kind of, you know, kind of nice. So to fill this up, I'm going to start with day 1 and 8 and 15, which are all in the little tins, and I'm going to put those on the top one, and then I think I'm going to alternate between these two shelves. So I did with 1, okay, so now we're going to go 2, 3, and then of course the bottom shelf will end on day 25. So these are my 3 ideas for making your own at-home advent calendar with the tea that you might already have at home. You can either fill up a little box with little envelopes or tins or sachets, make your own little punch-out advent calendar, or make one that is like a pretty shape to display. I did also purchase one advent calendar, and I will be doing a video every day going through that advent calendar. I probably won't go through these ones every day, but in December I will be releasing a vlog every Friday, and that will have a little bit more about my other advent calendars. But I think that this is going to be an incredibly long video, and you guys are probably done hearing from me. So that is all for this episode of Kayla's Kitchen. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe down below. And don't forget to hit that notification bell, because I will be posting a ton of holiday videos, and you're gonna want to see those, so you'll want to, you know, be told when I post. But that is all for now, so as always, happy sipping!